Hey there, and welcome back to episode number 3 of Engaging Niche HCP podcast. And I'm your host, Jason Fair, and I'm excited. I just finished a swim and I'm pumped up for this episode. I'm going to break down a lot of different tactics and strategies. So if you're an HCP marketer, you're going to want to tune into this episode for sure. Just high level agenda, what we're going to focus on today, several different topics. One of them that it's on your radar, but probably lower down in the radar, specifically around cookieless future and how it's the game changer for digital marketing in the landscape. I'm going to dig into it and how you can leverage cookies. Not really cookies anymore because they're going away, right? So what's the alternative? Well, it's first party data. I'm going to nerd out about that topic for sure. The other topic I'm going to talk about and really show as an example of how you can use first party data in your digital outreaches, your digital campaigns. Excited to dig into that. Specifically for, as the example, we've got ASCO coming up. So if you're in the oncology space, pharma space, you know, oncology is the Super Bowl specifically around oncology. I'm going to dig into that. That's exciting. Also, for those marketers out there that are looking for jobs, I've got 13 or 14 different listed. I'm going to include these on the show notes. My heart goes out to all those people looking for jobs as a marketer. Wanted to showcase some of those opportunities. I'm also going to talk about AI tools and how I philosophically think about AI tools in my workflow every single day as a marketer. I've got a couple other podcasts that I want you guys to check out. The last thing is we've got a LinkedIn group. It's a valuable group. You want to check that out too. All this is in the show notes. But let's start at the top here. Let's start talking about the cookieless future. Again, it's the game changer for the digital marketing landscape. It's probably one of the biggest things that's going to impact your digital campaigns. I want to bring you the information. Want to talk about specifically what's the world like without cookies. And as you probably already know and are aware, Google's already mentioned that 2024 next year, it's going to be a cookieless. They're going to go cookieless. So I've got a couple of links in the show notes for a couple different articles that you can check out. Go down your own rabbit hole, check it out. But really, ultimately, your campaigns are going to rely on first party data. Well, what's first party data? Let's talk about it for a moment here. Specifically for HCPs, we collaborate with our clients, but it doesn't really matter who you're targeting. There's a variety of different first party databases out there as an HCP marketer. And specifically for this podcast, that's who we're targeting. So let's talk about that for a moment. We use a couple different providers. We also have clients that have data providers that they work with, like Definitive Healthcare. There's NPI numbers. And if you're not familiar with an NPI number, it's a national provider identifier. It's a database that you can access either through like a Definitive Healthcare or working with us that we can access this data. We can leverage this data to reach your niche HCPs online, digitally, through lifestyle sites. So think of it like as sports, news, weather. Also, we can reach them socially, LinkedIn, Twitter, like usual suspects, obviously. But it's a great way to bridge the gap. So if you are a Definitive Healthcare subscriber, you're paying for that. What happens a lot of times, you're leveraging it for sales outreach, obviously, and email outreach. And then that's the limitation. Well, we help bridge the gap using that data, again, to reach your HCPs digitally online. I'll include in the show notes a link to go down that rabbit hole to learn how you can use those national provider identifiers. But essentially, that database is a database that's required, or at least the NPI numbers required by HIPAA for any financial transaction. So the particular database that we work with, there's a few of them. One of them is a healthcare recruiter. So we actually have the HCP's personal email. Once they log in, we know they're online. Boom, we can target them. Obviously, it sounds creepy, but as marketers, we're all kind of creepers, right? So that's that next level when it comes to targeting. And especially when you think about a major conference coming up like ASCO, right? How do you prime up your audience, specifically in this case of medical oncologists? Well, you can leverage the power of this first party data in essence to do that. So if you're having, like, for example, a product launch, you got a poster presentation, you got a product theater that you spent $100,000 with for ASCO, how do you reach that audience digitally ahead of time to warm them up, stand out? Because as we all know, like a conference like ASCO, it's pure mayhem. There's so many things going on, 30,000 attendees. there's dinners, there's lunches, there's breakfasts, and it's 3 or 4 days and it's jam packed, right? So if you're an HCP, your schedule is mayhem, right? And sometimes you get lost, right, in that mayhem as a marketer, as a company. Well, how do you stand out? One way to do that would be to prime the audience ahead of time, leveraging that first party data. So as you map out any of your conferences, and it doesn't have to be ASCO is just coming up here in the next couple of weeks in Chicago. But if you're having other conferences like we are with clients, I know another major conference that we're looking at is in July for AAC. We're also going to be capturing some strategic footage, video footage for a couple clients at a transplant Congress that's coming up in Chicago right after ASCO. So I'm going from Chicago to San Diego, but essentially conference strategies, like I'm a nerd for it. I love conferences. I love how you can maximize it pre to post conference. So again, a lot of this information I'm talking about will be in the show notes. So check it out, specifically leveraging first party data, and then also around how you can leverage that data before, during, and then also after the conference. So that's my ASCO example. And as it happens, and kudos to ASCO, real quick shout out to them. They mailed out the registration badges. I got it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't have to wait in line with those 30,000 people. It's behind me here. Or it was behind me. Oh, here it is right here. So I got the registration badge. It's brilliant because now I don't have to wait in line. They mailed it out. I registered, I don't know how many months ago. So kudos again, big shout out to ASCO to get that ahead of time, but excited for that event. The other thing I wanted to mention in the podcast, specifically around hiring, as clients and professional relationships in the industry, I've seen a lot of great marketers and sellers get in the cost cutting reduction process of companies. And so my heart goes out to all these amazing marketers that are out there, sellers that are out there looking for opportunities. And to give back to the community, I wanted to showcase at least a few opportunities that have popped up on my radar, specifically around job opportunities. And I'm scrolling down through here. So here's a couple of them. These will all be in the show notes as well. But there is, for a vascular company, they're looking for a product marketing manager. Ambry Genetics is looking for a senior director of marketing and product management. Love that position. It's remote. They put salary even in there and compensation. So that's in there. Check that out. Lab Conico has a marketing events coordinator position available. Invitae has a position available. I don't know if it's in marketing, it looks like. Path AI Diagnostics, they have a senior product marketer available. Gene Scoppy, and I may be pronouncing that wrong, but hey, I'm sorry, Lisa. I know you're on the sales team for that. I know that product should be launching pretty quickly, and it looks like they're looking for a marketer there. Somagen, they're looking for sellers, and it looks like here we've got a manager in the West, Southeast, and then also Mid-Atlantic. They're also looking for a marketing manager too. So all those opportunities are in the show notes. Please check them out. Heart goes out to, again, if you're out there, you're looking for job opportunities, hopefully this is a good resource for you as you look for your next adventure. Moving on here, I want to spend a few moments specifically around the topic of AI. It's changing everything. You're probably already maybe working with AI as far as different tools. I wanted to show and talk about at least 3 AI tools that I leverage every single day. And the way I look at it, mindset wise, philosophically, is it's kind of my sidekick, right? It's my human computer buddy that's generating thoughts and ideas. And the other thing to think about for AI is it's like a recommendation engine. So leverage that tool, leverage it as much as you want, depending on what sort of workspace that you're doing in marketing. A couple ways that I'm using it. One particular tool, for example, is called Reggie AI. Those notes will be in the show notes too, specifically around messaging and in particular, the messaging for sales outreach. And a lot of clients that we work with, we help the marketing team, sales team map out the cadence. And the great thing about a tool like Reggie AI is it gives, back to my earlier point, my philosophy, recommendation. So it's a recommendation engine. You can go in there. It's got a great email analyzer. So whatever you're doing for sales outreach, let's say you're using HubSpot, Apollo, you're going in there, you're setting up sequences, you're reaching current customers, prospects. It goes in there, you highlight it, it gives you recommendations, it gives you like, hey, you want to shorten it, you want to rephrase it. Again, recommendations. The other thing it does is there's a email analyzer that tells you how many words, how long is it going to take that person to read it, what's the level, what's the grade level for reading this email. And the great thing about that is a lot of times people think they need to jam as much information into an email as possible. But what happens is, and you just think about your normal email reading habits. If you know it's from somebody from a marketing organization or a company that's reaching out, trying to solicit, even if it's educational, what's in your mindset when you read that? Well, my mindset is, and it's probably similar to yours, you go through there, you skim, you skip, and then you get out of there, right? So they're not reading the actual email word for word and how it's spelled. So you want to come in. Reggie AI is recommending this. HubSpot does the same thing too. It's a 6th grade level, right? So that 6th grade level, again, isn't a knock on the person reading it. It's just how they're consuming your email. So again, Reggie AI is a great tool to be able to provide that sidekick analysis instead of maybe sending it over to someone else on the marketing team. Hey, read this. Let me know what your thoughts are. How many words is it? How long is it going to take to read somebody? It also says there's an I to you ratio. So you're talking more about not what you're offering, but potentially how it's going to benefit them based on their pain points. It has a cool ratio tool in there. So highly recommend checking out Reggie AI. The other tool that I use and have been using actually for probably about a year now is it's a AI tool. It's called Fireflies. Love all these names. Great, right? The Fireflies tool, again, I've been leveraging for a year, but they're all on my Zoom calls, right? And so they're in my note taker. It comes up all the time on a lot of calls. It came up twice this week. They're like, hey, what AI tool are you using? Fireflies. It's about 90% accurate. And I told that to another client the other day. They're going to probably change whoever they're using, but it's all transcribed and it's sent to me after the call. And so I'm presenting a lot, showing my screen. I don't have a lot of time to potentially make detailed notes. I do a lot of high level notes. And then again, it gets emailed back to me, and then I'll put it in our CRM or share it with our, strategy team, with our copywriting team, so they can go back through to say, hey, here's the goals, here's the objectives, here's the pain points, yada, 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 right? And so it's a great right hand for me to take notes. Its transcriptions are like 90%. You can set it up if you want to actually email to someone else automatically in the organization. So that's kind of the making yourself more efficient. How do you make yourself more productive using these AI tools? And so Fireflies for me is that productive, making me more efficient tool. The third tool that I use, and you've probably been using this, it's all over the news, it's everywhere, ChatGPT. I use it for a variety of different ways to stimulate ideas, writer's block, when it comes to copywriting for blogs, podcasts, emails, you name it. I can go in there. A lot of times I transcribe a full length conversation, as I was talking about with a client, dump that into ChatGPT, tell it to come back with a recommendation on, hey, what's like a 500 word like paragraph to crystallize the high level points of this conversation. It gets it probably about 70% there, which is great for me. I go back through there, I kind of compare and contrast, send that synopsis back to my team to say, hey, here's the overarching objectives for this call. That's one example on how you can leverage it. I was on another client call this week where we were trying to figure out, we strategized with them. We're helping them launch a podcast in the transplant industry, specifically for a variety of different healthcare topics for transplant. And they've got a chief medical officer that's going to execute that podcast, which is great. So they've got a spokesman. But we were talking about riffing like, hey, what do we call this? What do we call this podcast? What are some ideas and what are your thoughts? And it was kind of like spur of the moment. And I'm like, dude, give me some time to think about it with my team. But what came to my head off the top of my head was, have you used ChatGPT to drop in like a recommendation for like, put your description in there, it'll spit out specifically or give you recommendations on certain titles? And she's like, oh my gosh, no, my team did talk about it before, but I just really haven't used it. And I said, hey, use it. It's a great tool. Again, we use it every single day. So a couple different examples on how we're using AI it's a game changer. You should be leveraging. Don't fight it. It's not going to replace you, right? It's going to help you. It's going to be more productive. It's going to give you those recommendations. It's going to make you more efficient. So I'm going down the rabbit hole for sure. The other thing I want to mention, switching gears, is podcast. And in the show notes, I want to include a couple different podcasts that I regularly listen to. The hosts are amazing. Last episode, I talked about a genetics podcast that's hosted by Kira. This particular episode, I want to highlight an MS podcast featuring John Strum. John's been in the industry. His wife was affected with MS. He brings a really good perspective to it, not only from these brilliant neurosciences that he gets on the podcast, but then also MS activists, caregivers, and obviously just heroes battling MS. And I think this particular week he's at a major conference. He travels all over the world to get these amazing guests on his podcast. And I believe last time I talked to him he's on episode 200, maybe even 300 now. And I had to give him kudos. I had to give him a shout out just because he's so consistent. He gets great content out there. And again, these are amazing people in the MS space. So if you're a marketer, or if you're a company in the MS space, you're probably already listening to them. But if you're not, please feel to check him out. I'll have those show notes, those links in there to he's got a great YouTube channel. He's obviously on the usual suspects, Apple, Google Play, and then also Spotify. And finally, another great resource to you is our LinkedIn group, which is DigiVid Bio. I'm a contributor when it comes to the content. I'm part of that team, but it's a LinkedIn group. It's a networking group. It's also for collaborators to go in there and share information. We're really just starting to pick up the speed, the momentum with that group. I think we've got close to 400 members, but it's a great community for life science, biotech, genetics, genomics, aesthetic, medical marketers. Let's name them all, right? But specifically around those different areas. And then it's also for marketers, but also sellers. So if you're a seller, definitely check it out. We'd be honored to have you in the group. I'll include that link in the notes as well. And then finally, this is my last PSA. I'm gonna start doing this on all the episodes, but if you're a cyclist, if you're on the road, if you're driving, I'm a cyclist. That's my passion. That's one of the ways that I exercise, get endurance, and just disconnect from the digital world. It's so beneficial for me to get out there in the air, get the sun on me, hopefully not too much sun, but even just to open up my minds, and I get a lot of great ideas. So I implore you, if you see a cyclist on the road, give them some space, right? I ride all the time, and I get a lot of cars that are creeping up on me. I get people on phones, I've noticed, and there's been a lot of accidents. Every single day there's a bicycling accident. So just a quick PSA, if you're on the road, if you're traveling, you see a cyclist, just give us a little bit more room. All right. Look forward to talking to you soon. Anything that comes up as you go through these show notes, hit me up. Bye for now.